In this episode, we move into a part of incident handling that can shape how the outside world remembers a security event long after the technical details have faded, because once customers and reporters begin asking questions, the organization is no longer responding only inside its own walls. Customer and media communications are about explaining what is happening, what is known, what is still being investigated, and what affected people should do next, all without creating confusion, panic, or false confidence. For a brand new learner, this matters because even a strong technical response can be overshadowed by poor communication if customers feel ignored or if public statements sound evasive, careless, or contradictory. A cyber incident is not just a matter of logs, systems, and containment steps. It is also a moment when trust is tested in very public ways. Good communication helps the organization stay credible while facts are still developing. While poor communication can damage reputation, increase customer frustration, and create new problems that have little to do with the original technical event. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. At the most basic level, customer communication and media communication are related but not identical. Customer communication is aimed at the people and organizations that rely on the company's services, products, platforms, or data. It focuses on what affects them directly, whether they need to take any action, and how the organization is responding to protect their interests. Media communication is aimed at reporters, editors, broadcasters, and public audiences who may be trying to understand the broader significance of the incident. That communication often carries more public visibility and can influence how the event is perceived beyond the customer base itself. Both forms of communication require accuracy, restraint, and clarity, but they are not written for the same purpose. A message that helps a customer reset credentials or understand a service disruption may not satisfy a reporter asking about scope, accountability, and business impact. Strong incident handling recognizes that different outside audiences need different kinds of explanations, even when they are all asking about the same event. One of the most important ideas for beginners is that customers usually care less about technical language than security teams expect. Most customers are not asking whether the incident involved a specific exploit path, malware family, or authentication weakness. They want to know whether the service they use is available, whether their information may be affected, whether they need to change a password or monitor an account, and whether the organization is handling the issue responsibly. If communication focuses too much on technical detail, customers may come away confused and still not know what actually matters to them. On the other hand, if communication becomes too vague, they may assume the organization is hiding something or does not understand the problem itself. Good customer communication, therefore, translates a security incident into practical meaning. It respects customers enough to be honest and direct, while also respecting the fact that most of them are trying to answer simple, urgent questions about their own exposure, their own next steps, and whether they can still trust the organization they depend on. Timing is one of the hardest parts of customer and media communications because incidents rarely arrive with complete facts neatly arranged at the beginning. In the early hours, the organization may know that suspicious activity occurred, that a service is disrupted, or that a system is under investigation, but it may not yet know the full cause, impact, or scope. Waiting too long to communicate can create frustration, rumor, and the appearance of avoidance. Speaking too early with too much certainty can create a different problem if later findings force the organization to correct itself in public. The challenge is to communicate in stages. Early messages should explain what is currently known, what is being investigated, and when more information will follow. Later messages can become more detailed as confidence grows. For a new learner, this is one of the central habits of good incident communication. The organization does not need perfect certainty before saying anything, but it does need discipline in how it describes evolving facts so that each update remains credible rather than sounding like a correction to careless earlier claims. Customers and media audiences also approach incidents with very different goals, and that difference shapes how communication should work. Customers tend to think in terms of personal effect. They want to understand access, continuity, privacy, inconvenience, financial risk, or action they should take. The media tends to think in terms of public interest, accountability, consequence, timing, and organizational response. A customer may ask whether service will be restored today. A reporter may ask when the company first became aware of the issue, whether executives were informed, and whether customer data may have been exposed. Those questions overlap, but they are not identical. Good communication planning recognizes this and avoids treating all outward messaging as one generic statement. A single public notice may play a role, but it often needs to be supported by more targeted material for customers, support teams, and media contacts. That does not mean telling different stories. It means presenting the same truth through different lenses so that each audience gets the information most relevant to its concerns and responsibilities. Effective customer communication is usually built around clarity, usefulness, and visible responsibility. A strong message tells customers what happened in understandable terms, what services or information may be affected, what the organization has done so far, what customers should do if any action is needed, and how the organization will continue providing updates. It avoids dense jargon, legalistic fog, and abstract security wording that sounds impressive but leaves people guessing. It should also sound human. Customers who are worried about their accounts, their information, or their access to a needed service do not want a message that sounds like it was written only to protect the company from embarrassment. They want evidence that the organization understands the seriousness of the situation and is trying to be helpful. For a beginner, that means customer communication is not just a polished announcement. It is part of the response itself. It should reduce uncertainty where possible, guide practical action, and show that the organization is treating affected people as stakeholders who deserve more than minimal, reluctant disclosure. Customers usually need a few kinds of information more than anything else, even though the exact wording depends on the incident. They need to understand whether the issue affects availability, data, transactions, or account safety. They need to know whether the organization has evidence of misuse or is still investigating that possibility. They need to know what actions are being recommended, such as password changes, fraud monitoring, or attention to follow-up messages pretending to come from the company. They also need to know what support channels are available if they have questions or notice suspicious activity tied to their accounts. This does not require overwhelming them with every investigative detail. In fact, too much detail can make the message harder to use. The real goal is to make the communication actionable and relevant. New learners should remember that people receiving an incident notice are often anxious, busy, or frustrated. The best message is not the one that sounds most sophisticated. It is the one that helps people understand what matters to them and what they should do next. Just as important is understanding what weak customer communication looks like. One common mistake is minimizing the issue too quickly in an effort to calm concerns before the facts support that confidence. Another is using vague language that sounds careful but tells customers almost nothing, leaving them to wonder whether the company is deliberately withholding important facts. Some organizations lean too hard on technical phrasing, which can make customers feel excluded from information that affects them directly. Others overpromise by suggesting that the matter is fully resolved when the investigation is still active or by implying that no customer impact exists before that conclusion has been verified. These choices can all damage trust. For beginners, the lesson is that customer communication should not be treated as reputation paint brushed over a difficult event. It should be accurate, specific enough to be useful, and restrained enough to avoid making claims the organization may need to walk back later. Credibility grows when a company sounds honest and measured, not when it sounds eager to end the conversation before customers' questions are answered. Media communication requires its own discipline because reporters are often trying to place the incident in a larger public frame rather than simply understand their own individual exposure. They may ask how the event was discovered, whether similar incidents have happened before, how many customers or records might be involved, whether the company followed accepted practices, and whether outside authorities are engaged. These questions can feel uncomfortable, especially when facts are incomplete, but ignoring them or responding carelessly can make the public story worse. Good media communication is not about winning an argument with the press. It is about speaking with enough clarity and control that the organization can explain what it knows without speculating beyond the evidence. For a new learner, it helps to see reporters as part of the broader incident environment. They may influence how customers, partners, regulators, and investors understand the event. That is why media communication should be prepared thoughtfully, reviewed carefully, and delivered by people who can stay composed under pressure while respecting both the seriousness of the issue and the limits of current knowledge. A major part of effective media handling is message discipline. During a live incident, different executives, technical leaders, customer support representatives, and business managers may all be tempted to explain the situation in their own words. That creates risk because small differences in wording can sound like contradictions once they become public. One leader may say the issue appears limited, while another suggests the investigation is still broad. One spokesperson may describe customer effect as unlikely, while another says it is still being assessed. Even if these statements are not truly inconsistent, they can look inconsistent when separated from context. Strong media communication reduces that problem by using approved talking points, designated spokespersons, and regular coordination between technical responders, leadership, legal advisors, and public relations (PR) teams. For a beginner, this is a practical reminder that media communication is not just about speaking clearly. It is about speaking consistently. The organization's public voice needs to sound like one disciplined response rather than a collection of individual interpretations released under stress. Customer support and frontline communication teams are also crucial during incidents because they are often the people customers reach first when confusion or concern begins to rise. If a public notice is issued but support representatives do not understand it, customers may hear conflicting explanations depending on whom they contact. That kind of inconsistency can quickly make the organization look disorganized, even if the core response is strong. Good incident communication, therefore, includes preparing support teams with accurate summaries, approved language, likely questions, and guidance on when to escalate customer concerns for additional review. These teams do not need every technical detail, but they do need enough clarity to respond calmly and consistently. For beginners, this is a useful lesson because it shows that communication is not complete when a statement is posted online or sent by email. The organization also has to make sure the people who answer phones, tickets, chats, and account questions are ready to reinforce that message in ways that remain accurate and helpful under pressure. Another important principle is that updates matter almost as much as the first message. Customers and reporters often become more frustrated when an organization communicates once and then seems to disappear, especially if services remain affected or the public story keeps growing. Even when the investigation is still developing, periodic updates help maintain trust because they show the organization is active, engaged, and not simply hoping the issue fades. Updates can confirm continued investigation, provide revised timelines for service restoration, clarify earlier uncertainties, or explain newly recommended actions. They do not need to be long to be useful. What matters is that they move the story forward honestly. For new learners, this is an important mindset shift. Communication during an incident is not a single announcement. It is a process that continues as the organization learns more. When updates are consistent, timely, and tied to real developments, they help prevent rumor from filling the silence and show that the organization respects the people affected enough to keep them informed rather than leaving them to piece together the situation alone. A related challenge is balancing transparency with care. Organizations should not hide meaningful facts from customers or the public, but they also cannot publish every internal detail the moment it appears in a log or preliminary investigation note. Some information may still be unverified. Some may create confusion if released too early. Some may involve security-sensitive details that should not be broadly shared while containment is still underway. Good communication, therefore, means being transparent about what matters while still exercising judgment about what should be communicated at a given stage. For beginners, this is one of the most delicate parts of the topic because it is easy to imagine transparency as either total openness or suspicious silence. In practice, good transparency is purposeful. It means sharing the information people need in order to understand their situation, trust the organization's handling, and take any necessary action, while also being explicit about what remains under investigation. That approach is much stronger than either extreme because it combines honesty with discipline. Consider a simple example involving an online retailer that discovers suspicious activity affecting a customer account management platform during a major sales week. Customers begin seeing forced password resets, and some users cannot log in for several hours. A weak response might post a short message blaming technical difficulties, avoid mentioning the security concern, and leave support teams guessing about what to tell angry customers. Reporters who notice social media complaints then publish stories based on fragments, while customers grow more suspicious because the public statement does not match what they are experiencing. A stronger response would explain that suspicious activity was detected, that password resets and temporary access interruptions are part of protective measures, that the company is investigating whether any account information was affected, and that additional updates will follow as more facts are confirmed. Support teams would receive aligned guidance, and media inquiries would be answered with consistent messaging grounded in current evidence. That version does not eliminate inconvenience, but it does reduce confusion and preserve far more trust during a difficult moment. Another example shows how media communication can influence the wider narrative. Imagine a business software provider suffers an outage linked to malicious activity, and several large clients publicly complain about service interruption. Reporters begin asking when the provider first knew something was wrong and whether it warned customers fast enough. If company representatives respond defensively, speculate carelessly, or contradict one another, the story may shift from outage recovery to questions about competence and honesty. If, instead, the provider communicates in a calm and consistent way, acknowledges disruption, explains that investigation and restoration are underway, and commits to updates without pretending every answer is already known, the public conversation is more likely to remain grounded in verified facts. For a beginner, that is the deeper lesson in customer and media communications. The organization cannot always control whether an incident becomes public or whether customers become upset. What it can control is the quality, consistency, and usefulness of what it says once outside audiences begin paying attention. By the end of this discussion, the main takeaway is that customer and media communications are not minor side tasks attached to a security incident after the technical work has started. They are core parts of how the organization protects trust, guides affected people, and presents its response to the outside world while the situation is still developing. Good customer communication explains practical impact, recommended action, and ongoing updates in language people can actually use. Good media communication helps the organization answer public questions with consistency, credibility, and appropriate restraint. Both depend on timing, internal alignment, message discipline, and the ability to speak honestly without rushing past what is still unknown. For a new CySA Plus learner, the mindset to keep is simple but important. A cyber incident may begin in systems and logs, but it quickly becomes a human communication event as well. When organizations handle customers and media well, they make a hard situation easier to navigate. When they handle them poorly, they can turn a serious incident into an even deeper trust problem.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.